Kenny Brooks transformed James Madison, transformed Virginia Tech, is now set to do the same thing with what he called a sleeping giant at Kentucky. We're going to talk all about it. He is here. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
Ogunbowale for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Well, hi there and happy Wednesday, everybody, and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. Nice quiet week, right? And in the sport, as they always are, we've crowned a national champion. We are 5 days from the WNBA draft, and there is movement afoot as always. So I'm your host, Howard Megdal, welcoming you. Thank you for making us your first listen as you come through for us, over 200,000 of you just last month alone. We come through for you 6 days a week. It is, of course, not just me. It is the entire team over at The Next, where we cover women's basketball 24/7, had 198 reported pieces in March alone. And, of course, that's why we had north of 2.7 million readers in March alone. So make sure you subscribe. $9 a month, $72 a year over at thenexthoops.com. Just get it all right in your inbox. Haven't sent right to you. It'll come all the time, as it did at 1 a.m. Eastern time last night when the great Michelle Smith, USBWA Hall of Famer, talked to and then wrote about Tara Vanderveer and her shock decision to retire. And Kenny Brooks, who is very much not retiring and has some really interesting work ahead of him, joins me. Kenny, just before we get into your career arc, your life, and where you are now, just what was your reaction? Listen, it surprised us. We like to break the news, but we were surprised about it last night to hear about Tara.
Well, you can imagine my week. There's been a lot of surprises surrounding programs that I'm associated with, with Calipari and his situation. And, sometimes you just don't know whether to believe it or not. Mm-hmm. And but obviously, we've seen a lot of legends in many different sports, retire, which some people may think was prematurely. But with the ever-changing landscape in college athletics, you're kind of seeing it more and more. So nothing surprises you anymore. But I do think that we lost a legend, from our game, and what Tara has done. She's easily have to be considered one of the top 5 coaches of all time. Mm-hmm. And so I was looking forward to competing against her, obviously, with them joining the ACC when I was at Virginia Tech. Just because, she's a legend and everything that she's done for the game. But I'm sure that, she's going out on her terms, and she's probably going to enjoy, the rest of her time. And it's well-deserved because she's made her mark on women's basketball like very few have. And so we'll miss her. We'll miss her. And hopefully Stanford can continue, the tradition that she's created there.
It's interesting to me when you talk about tradition and sort of the way in which we regard coaches, and so much of it is measured in wins and losses. And when we look at your career and the trajectory of it, obviously you have that as well. But I also think, and this is the thing that has always impressed me about your work, is that you have won often in non-traditional places in non-traditional ways. And so, for our listeners, just to give a sense of it, that you turned James Madison into not just a winning program, but in some ways a factory for pros. Mm-hmm. That consistently people could come play for you there, that you guys were excellent year in and year out, and people like Tyon come in and not just make the league, but have extended careers is very significant. You go to Virginia Tech, which is not a traditional hotbed of women's basketball, and have turned it into a place that, people go down to Blacksburg, and the experience itself, as the great Lindsay Gibbs, a colleague of mine, wrote about, was something that people never forgot when they did. And so as you come to Kentucky, before we get into the sort of where the rubber hits the road, I wonder for you, how do you go about measuring success in a particular program?
Well, I think you have to first and foremost start with the players. Sometimes they get lost in the shuffle because we understand that it's a business, and it becomes more and more of a business as we continue on. You're really judged on wins and losses. But if you're a true coach, and you got into it for the very right reasons, it's about relationships, building relationships. You mentioned Ty Young. I talked to her yesterday, and, she's doing wonderfully, but, she's a part of my life. And it's because of the relationship that I've built. I had a young lady, Dawn Evans, who played at James Madison and, has gone on to become a successful actor in Hollywood. And so, those things are just as important as the points that they put up for me or, how many games we won while they were there. And it continued as I went to Virginia Tech. And, as you mentioned, it's not a hotbed for recruits to want to come in. And I think we could, the highest we could get was maybe a top 30, top 40 recruit. But we had tremendous relationships and we built relationships. And when you build a tremendous relationship with a kid, that's how they're going to run through a wall for you. And you spend a lot of time with the development piece. And if they meet you halfway, then you can continue to get better because kids can come in with rankings all they want. That just kind of proves to you that, who was the best at the time. And now if you come in with a different mindset and you have kids like Elizabeth Kitley, Georgia Amore, players, Asia Shepherd, who are willing to put in the work, then you can compete with anybody as long as they believe it. And so that's been our MO. And, that's why we've been very successful. And it's been a product that we love because it's built on relationships. And I walked in here 2 minutes before I sat down with you and I'm having a text conversation with Elizabeth Kitley. And so that's something that will continue on just because the nature of our relationship is not just basketball. I love it when they come into my office and they can sit down and we can talk about anything, everything, and nothing. And Georgia Amore has been in my office before and we've talked for like 6 hours and, just about life. And so I think those are recipes for helping you develop young people. And then as a result, you have a good relationship. They'll go out and they believe in you and they believe in the trust that you guys have in each other. And that really affects the play and affects the program in a very positive way.
Is that the most rewarding part of it for
It
you
is.
as well? I mean, family, 4 children, but more than that, a family that you have built over this period of time, at your alma mater and then on to now this, second high profile program in this case. Is there a relationship that sort of you think back on and you say, this one even stands out? Look, is it Georgia? Is it at the moment? Is it someone like Ty, who I've had the privilege of covering throughout her pro career as well? What is that where it really stands out to you?
It is. I have trophies. I don't know where they are. I have rings. I don't know where they are. We raised a Final Four banner last year, and it gave me a thrill, but not as much as watching them walk into my office and we sit down and have a conversation. And that's what I'm all about. It's what it's all about. It's why I got into the business. And Tamara, as we affectionately call her, Ty Young, she was Tamara when I had her, and so she grew up a little bit. But just having that relationship, those type of relationships, she was probably my first that, I really dove into and had that type of relationship where we built trust amongst each other. And then it just blossomed into something very, very special. Dawn Evans, as I mentioned, she was the same way. Jasmine Gwathmey, who got drafted to the WNBA at James Madison, she came into my office one day and she asked me for my permission to ask her fiance, could she get married? And, those type of moments just blow you away and let you know it's more than about putting the ball in the basket. And then we moved on to Virginia Tech. And when you are trying to change the culture, it's difficult. And when we were able to turn that corner and change the culture was when I got an Elizabeth Kitley and I got a Kayla King, and then Georgia Amore came on board. And the relationships that I built with those young ladies, it propelled us into something very, very special. ACC championship, which no one ever thought we could accomplish. Then we go to the Final Four, which no one ever thought we could accomplish. And then we back that up with a regular season ACC title, which, we got derailed from being able to see what we could do in the tournament because of Elizabeth Kitley's injury. But nonetheless, we have relationships that will last forever. And that's the most important thing to me, because as I mentioned before, I don't know where my replica banner for the Final Four is. I don't know where my championship trophy is or my championship ring, but I know where those kids stand with me. And that's the most important thing. And that's why I coach.
I can't even imagine how much what if you spend time thinking about as it relates to the team this year.
Yeah.
But, oh, Coach, if we could have seen Elizabeth Titley healthy, seen what your team could have done. That one's going to loom in my mind, and it wasn't even my team. It
Yeah.
was, so we'll talk more about the way you play and let's say the commonalities that you intend to bring from the enormous success of Virginia Tech on over to Kentucky in segment 2. Back to talk a lot more with Kenny Brooks. Howard Megdal here, Locked On Women's Basketball. Locked On Women's Basketball is brought to you by Game Time. And look, Game Time offers you the easy way to get tickets, and not just any tickets, but the particular tickets that you want. I have a 10-year-old daughter, we've talked about her on the program, who is a basketball obsessive. So when I am not covering women's basketball, I am taking her to women's basketball games, and she wants to know very specifically, all right, Dad, where are we sitting? What's the view? She has particular players she wants to focus on, and Game Time allows you to do that. If you download the app, they not only show you where you're sitting, but there is a view from your seat. And the WNBA is rapidly approaching. A lot of Kenny Brooks alums in the WNBA. And so Game Time's a way to go ahead and see those players live. How do you do it? Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Be a hero to your daughter. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. I'm back with the great Kenny Brooks. And as I think about this jump from Virginia Tech to Kentucky, I just, the place that I even want to start, and I watched your presser, and you talked about you weren't looking to make a move, and that makes a ton of sense, given what had been built there. But what was like a tipping point for you as you thought about not just what is being offered to you, but what's being offered as a means of building the program?
Well, I think a lot of what I was really thinking about is coming to fruition right now through just talks about the men's program. It's Kentucky basketball. Now, obviously, the men's program has had way more success and been on a national scene a lot more, but it's still Kentucky basketball. And when you go across the country, we had to do a lot of selling, about Virginia Tech, who we were, because we were kind of like a newcomer on the scene, and we had to, just educate people on who we were. And now I think you got a little bit more of a head start, when you just say Kentucky basketball, and the fan base is passionate. They're waiting for, a winner. And, I've been here for a couple of days, kind of on and off, and I can't hide, and, people are coming up to me and, just talking about the excitement. They're glad that I'm here. I never thought in a million years that, one weekend I'd be the longest tenured basketball coach here, but nonetheless, here it is. But I do. I think it's just tremendous opportunities. The renovations that they're having at Memorial, I think, puts you on the, it's going to be a wonderful arena for women's basketball. It's not too big. So, every seat's going to be, a great seat, and then you're going to be able to have tremendous atmosphere. And then, I can't ignore the fact that, it's an ever-changing landscape in college athletics. And, the two that really are at the forefront are the SEC and the Big Ten. You never know. We talk about, like changes, there's probably change on the horizon. And, you want to align yourself, to be in the best possible position that you can compete at the highest level. And so all those things factored in, it wasn't really one reason. And, but I'm a person that, has made decisions based on my gut feeling. And there's no, one or two things that happened or didn't happen for me to make the decision. And it was a very tough decision. And, but nonetheless, my grandmother always told me, make your decision and then make it the best decision. And that's what we're doing here. We're hitting the ground running and, just trying to get the culture here changed.
It reminded me a lot of your college coach, of Lefty Driesell, who did not hesitate to make moves in his career where he saw the game going and succeeded, as everywhere he went. And I wonder, is that something that resonates in your mind as you think about sort of what a coaching career can and even should look like in your mind?
Well, I've had an unprecedented coaching career. I was at James Madison. I was on the men's side, for a long time at James Madison, my alma mater. I switched over to become a women's assistant, not the women's head coach, a women's assistant. I really love the game. So I stayed there for a while again. And then I was the head coach there for 14 years. So in totality, I was there for probably about 20 straight years, at James Madison. And, everyone kept telling me, you can retire here. You can be the coach here forever. But that wasn't what I wanted. I love James Madison, and James Madison gave me my start. And I'm forever grateful for the people there. I love them, still bleed purple and gold. But, I knew that there was challenges out there that I really wanted to endure. I wanted to test my wits against the best each and every night. Really didn't get a lot of overtures, and that's something we can talk about as well. People will say, well, I didn't think you wanted to leave. Well, you didn't ask, so you didn't approach me. And so I stayed there. Fortunate, I got inducted to the Hall of Fame 2 years ago. And, so forever be in my heart, but then, I took an opportunity at Virginia Tech, which you mentioned before. It wasn't deemed a great situation in the ACC, and they were in need of a coach. And I went there and with the mentality, hey, let's work hard. And it took a little while. It took a little while to get the fan base on board to what we were preaching. To get the right type of players in there, to be able to compete with that highest level. And then we got it there. Tremendous atmosphere, as you mentioned before. People really bought in. But it was just like, okay, my gut says, hey, there's a lot of change about to come. And, you want to make sure you align yourself in the best possible position. And I've been coaching for 30 years, and I've been very fortunate that I've been able to make my decisions as to where I'm going. And a lot of coaches can't say that. And a lot of coaches can't say that. And, the fan base at Virginia Tech, they were a little harsh. They were a little upset that I left. But what they don't understand is that I've worked 30 years hard to put myself in a position to be able to make decisions for me and my family. And, we're not pieces of property. We are the coaches of the team, but we are family people, and we do have interests, and we do have goals, and we do have things that we want to accomplish. And if it happens to be at your university, that is wonderful. That is absolutely wonderful. But I'm not a different person, 2 weeks later after I leave a position than I was 2 weeks before I left the position. Still the same person, but you just make personal decisions that, you feel like are going to be best for you and your family, whether it's in the moment or whether it's in the future. But it doesn't change what type of person. So I think that you just always have to you can't get complacent. You always have to, see what's the best opportunity for you. And that's what I did. And that's how everything transpired. And for me being here at Kentucky.
I mean, fandom is, I guess, by definition, irrational, right?
Yes.
Is the idea behind it. But, to your larger point as well, there's almost parallels, frankly, between Tara's decision to step away and your decision to move to Kentucky, as we think about what the SEC is about to be. And fears and understandable fears. The ACC, as you say, adding a couple of programs, but it's not the SEC. And I have to check my math on this. I think has the top 78 teams in the country next year. I mean, it's just this monster powerhouse of, I'm exaggerating just slightly, but when you think about, even adding a Texas alone to what the SEC already is, it also creates, like you said, you want to test your wits, right? You're about to enter this conference and go up against Vic Schaefer and go up against the great Dawn Staley, and you can just go up and down the the programs and the coaches involved. It feels at some level, either the SEC or the Big Ten, however you want to measure it, and there'll be debates about that, I know, for a long time to go, as the highest level challenge you can have as a coach. It seems like you relish that opportunity.
You have to, if you want to be the best you can be, you can't hide from people. You can't, and you have to be able to. And if you're hiding from them, then you're not confident in your abilities or what you're able to create. And when I got to Virginia Tech, I famously said this on game day: if you want to make some chicken salad, you got to have some chicken. And so if you want to compete with the best, you have to have the best. And, and in order to go get the best, you need to be in a situation that you have something to showcase and to provide for them. And I'll be very honest, we were extremely lucky to get an Elizabeth Kitley who turned into who she was. But we think that we had a big hand in that. Elizabeth Kitley came in and she was, a top 35 recruit. And then she left Virginia Tech as a 3-time ACC Player of the Year and 3-time AP All-American. And, I did every one of her workouts. And, so we helped create that. Georgia Amore came in as, a relatively unknown. She was a 3rd-string point guard on her national team. And I went all the way to Belarus. I traveled to Belarus to see her, saw something special in her, and we developed her. Now, I think that we can be one step ahead where we can get some of that chicken and, to develop it. And you're going up against great coaches. You have to. And, we went to a Final Four and we had to go through some juggernauts to get there. We had to beat Tennessee. We had to beat Ohio State. And we were 1 quarter away from, beating LSU for playing for a national championship. And they're all great coaches. And if you're running from it, then, you don't really want to be the best that you can be. Yeah. And so, and at some point, like when I was in the ACC, when I walked in, there was Sylvia Hatchell, there was Muffet McGraw, there was Joanne P. McCauley, there were Jeff Walls, Wes Moore. There were a lot of good coaches, but at some point you got to be able to say, one day they're going to say, okay, well, Kenny Brooks is in the room too. And if you don't believe that and you're scared and you're running from it, then you probably shouldn't be coaching in general, because things are shaping up to where you're going to have to play the best, and you can't just wait until NCAA tournament to run into them. You got to run into them each and every night.
Well, they are certainly saying that, and we are certainly saying that there is Kenny Brooks. And so I want to talk more about Georgia and about what is ahead for this team in 24-25 as well. So back with Kenny Brooks with our final segment in just a moment. But first, I want to talk to you guys about BetterHelp. And BetterHelp is the sponsor of today's program. And it is also an opportunity to, in a convenient way, get help you need with perspective, with therapy. Let's say you live in the Hawkeye State and you are upset about the way in which the national title game ended. Let's say there's something larger going on in your life that you need to work on and work through. This segment is brought to you by BetterHelp. It gives you the opportunity, BetterHelp, to be able to get that perspective you need. Online therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have, and say, bigger problems than your favorite sports team, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. How do you do it? Entirely online. BetterHelp is designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA and you get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Talk to someone today. Back with Kenny Brooks. And again, I was courtside for that game against LSU last year and saw just how close you guys were to advance into the national championship game. When you and Georgia are having this conversation about unfinished, is it about unfinished business? Is it about figuring out that there are mountains still to climb? Obviously, and we talked about this a little earlier, what this team could have done with Elizabeth Kitley at Virginia Tech this past year is something. I'm even going to start there. Like, how do you process that? How do you move past that? Because it feels like such a great what if. They come back. They obviously, having talked to both of them, they love you and value you. What was that like? How do you get past that?
You know what? They're like daughters to me. And obviously watching Elizabeth go down, it hurt. It hurt for a myriad of reasons. Obviously her well-being, her future, immediate future. And then, then going back to the team, I think it has crept in my mind about, what could have happened, but really the focus was just on her mental health so much, making sure that she was able to get through it because she worked so hard to get to where she was. And, for it to be just taken away from her on, a move that she's done 100 times, before. And so we really had to shift that focus on in immediate time to reinventing our team. And it was never a good time for it to happen. But as you're heading into the ACC championship, you're playing well. We had won at that point 10 out of 11 games before she got hurt, and so you're playing well enough that you're in the conversation for a number one seed, things of that nature. And then you go into the ACC tournament, and you had to totally reinvent yourself. And we'll be very honest. We went through a situation where we probably we ran through her 70% of our offense, whether it was to get it to her or to get it into her so we can kick it back out. It started with her. So we had to reinvent ourselves. I was very proud of the team and the way that they, tried. We ran into, Notre Dame, who was playing exceptionally well at that time, and just really didn't make a game out of it. But then we came back to the NCAA tournament, and I thought we handled ourselves extremely well. We had a little bit more time to reinvent ourselves, had some young players step in and step up. And then, right after that, here I am at Kentucky. So really haven't had a whole lot of time to sit back and wonder what if. I'm sure that time will come when my brain stops racing. But you do understand that injuries are a part of it. We weren't the only team that, had to go through a major injury and then try to, recoup. We've just been very fortunate not to have any leading up to that moment. But, you'll always sit back and you'll wonder. But I think the best thing is to just really cherish what you were able to accomplish and what you were able to experience.
It's interesting too. Liz takes such good care of the ball as well. Turnover percentage below 10%. And again, it's the way in which you guys valued the possessions that you do have. More significantly, the fact that, this was not a team that forced turnovers. In fact, I think you guys were 360th in the country of 360 in forcing turnovers, but you were a team that was capable of defending exceptionally well, and you were top 30 in the nation in defensive points per possession, all the same, making people take uncomfortable shots. Obviously, Liz, as a rim protector, is a critical part of that. Georgia being able to find her teammates obviously is where you start. Offensively, though, beyond that, as you build, and you have to build in sort of a new way, how quickly can you turn a Kentucky roster, and obviously part of this is also who you bring in, into a roster that does it that way, where you guys are just consistently, especially in the Georgia era, you guys are consistently top 20 in the country in terms of offensive efficiency?
Yeah, it's kind of the evolution of the sport now. And it used to be where you could do a lot of projecting. And you could do a lot of projecting, not only with your team, but with other teams. They have, such and such coming back. They have this team, they have that team. And now with the freedom of movement, with the transfer portal, you just don't know. You don't know who is what. Obviously, you can look at teams like LSU, and you can see what they lost. They lost to Haley Van Lith. They lost to Angel Reese. But you never know what they're going to be able to get in. You look at Texas A&M. They lose Barker. So every day you're like, okay, teams are just changing, and it's just something we have to get used to, and it used to be like you could write down on paper, hey, this team's going to be good. You could say this in April, this team's going to be good, and you could, just try to continue, and you were working inside out. You were in the gym working with your kids to try to make sure they're going to get better through development. And now it's gotten to the point where people are getting better quickly through the transfer portal.
No,
and so it's just, we're just really trying to lock in and focus on us and bringing in a team that we feel like can compete. And, to say that you can go out and, compete for a SEC championship, I'm not going to disrespect anybody that's in the league, because I don't know what we're going to be. I don't know what they're going to be. And so I just know that we're going to come out here and put out a product that Wildcat fans can be proud of, and then we'll go from there. We'll go from there. As long as we can continue to improve every day, I think we have a shot to be better. If you have a shot to be better, that's closer to being able to be, in contention for contending. And so that's how we're approaching it. And I think that's the only way you can approach it, because it's an ever changing landscape, and, kids are moving. My days are so up and down. I walked in here yesterday, and, maybe you're on a little bit of a low, and then all of a sudden you get, a couple of phone calls and you're on a high, and then you can get a text today and you put you back on a low. And so you just kind of try to stay even keel and understand, and get some really good people in here that are going to represent.
If you'll forgive a point of personal privilege, as somebody who's seen what you've built everywhere, it's a matter of when, not if. And it's going to be fascinating to see. And I'm excited to have you back once your team is stocked and the shelves behind you are stocked as well, when you have a chance to build a team and an office all together. But I am fascinated to see what is ahead, and very much looking forward to it. So to our listeners, pay very close attention to Kentucky women's basketball, because some big things are happening thanks to Kenny Brooks. And thanks to our listeners, of course, for showing up. We will be back again with you tomorrow, the way we are 6 days a week, talking about this sport that we all love to pay close attention to. I'm Howard Megdal, wishing all of you a wonderful Wednesday.
Ogunbowale for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.